There we go. We're live.
Yes, sorry, we're back.
Sorry, guys.
So, thank you to our production engineer, Krista.
Yes.
Say hello. Say hello, Krista.
Oh, hi. Sorry.
No, say hello, Krista.
Hello, Krista.
Yeah, she did it like that. So today, before we lead into Chapter 7 of the Adaptive Research and Stage Diminished Health, which next week we're going to start talking about the diagnosed conditions. Yes, I said that. Paradigm and adaptability. We're just going to kind of wind things up here a little bit so you can get into it and understand what we're talking about. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Referencing the textbook of Human Adaptability by Dr. Rob Sinnott. It's kind of our frame of reference for those of us who wish to follow along the way. But you live your life through your nerve system. Every human experience you have is through your nerve system. If that experience is less than optimal, my advice, get your nerve system checked. There's absolutely no reason to add chemicals. I'm going to go on to his eye conversation before we get going here about what we just talked about with adding chemicals, which I find interesting. But the role of the autonomic nerve system is to create tone, harmony, balance. If that autonomic nerve system is not functioning properly, tone, balance, harmony is not there. What chiropractic does is we work with that autonomic nerve system through the spinal cord with specific chiropractic adjustments to help either the gas pedal, the sympathetic nerve system, or the brake, the parasympathetic nerve system, work more optimally, which these dudes are going to cover. How we measure that is we've got what's called the heart rate variability. We have two of those technology. That's our methods of measurement in the office. We'll do this on your initial visit and then periodically in your care. Once you get through that initial stages of care, so we get some correction, stabilization in our spine, then that's going to be our methods of measurement about every 30 to 45 days, maybe less, maybe more, but kind of give you an idea. And we're going to measure that harmony, that balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nerve system. Typically, traditionally, we see people mostly in sympathetic dominance, correct?
Correct.
That could be to an overriding sympathetic nerve system or an underriding parasympathetic nerve system, which these guys are going to cover. Then off of that technology, what we find on your pictures, and more importantly, we find on you, is going to let us know where we need to work at, and then from that point, how often we need to see you. So it's interesting, and this is just kind of a little tangent. Him and I were talking about a young lady that's suffering from headaches, and she was advised to maybe seek, and she was getting better, right? Getting results, seeking results, and then advised to maybe seek another course of care by another healthcare provider who already wasn't successful at it, correct? Yeah. They failed successfully, but I guess they felt like adding more drugs would help the condition. That's not going to work. What I'm going to tell you is get your nervous system checked. So with that, I'm done. I can't wait till next week when we start covering some really cool conditions. So
That's cool. All right, so essentially we'll look at, there are two parts of the nervous system. Like we were talking about with the analogy of a car, you got your parts that speed you up, parts that slow you down. So your gas pedal, your brake pedal. So a lot of people think that the nerve system works like a teeter-totter. You got basically one part speeds up, the other part slows you down, goes down. It essentially works like this. But when we look at the cutting-edge research, it shows that there are actually two independent systems that work with each other, that go up and down. Now the important thing in regards to health is if you make sure that that's balanced, where if they're high functioning, that both are up on the same level. Or if they're lower functioning, they're both on the same level. Now, what we're finding is when you have stress overload syndrome, in regards to being sped up.
S.O.S.
That a lot of people today, they're on that gas pedal. So they're just going down that highway. And so, a lot like a Ferrari engine, they're really good at getting stressed. But the problem arises is that our brakes don't work.
They got bicycle brakes.
Bicycle brakes. So what we're finding is that we don't need to tone down the engine. We need to work on getting those brakes working. Because if you don't get those brakes taken care of, you keep going and going and going, you're going to crash sooner or later. And so that's why we do what we do here. We work on getting the brakes working properly.
So are you trying to say that most people have Ferrari engines where we're going and going, which is good because that's the creativity in us. But we're seeing a lot of those Ferrari engines with bicycle brakes or in your case, trike brakes.
Yes.
Because you haven't really moved up to a bike yet. So, because we haven't taken the training wheels off your bike yet, right?
You don't want to move too fast now.
So we have trike brakes. So, but that's what you're saying. We're dealing with people whose brakes are not really effective enough to slow them down.
Correct.
But the medical model, tell me if I'm right, the allopathic model is to dumb down the sympathetic nervous system.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, which really, actually, think about that. If you're here, we don't want to throw more dope, we'll say, to dumb things down. What we want to do is let's keep you here because you need that sympathetic nervous system. For example, I mean, if you're a little deer and you're drinking water, you know where I'm going with this, you're drinking water from this big lake, and all of a sudden, out of the blue comes a saber-tooth tiger, right? It's going to eat you. Well, if we dumb down the sympathetic nervous system and not let that sympathetic nervous system work, guess what's going to happen to you? That saber-tooth tiger is going to do what? You've now become lunch, dinner, and dessert for the saber-tooth tiger. So what we want to do is keep that here, but we just want to make the brakes work so when you're running away from that saber-tooth tiger, you can hit the brakes and go, I'm away from him. Now I'm going to go back to drinking water. Am I correct?
Correct.
Yep. That was a pretty good analogy, wasn't it? You.
Good. So
try to outdo that one.
I don't know if I can. So everybody talks about, their numbers, their health, their resting heart rate, their blood pressure, everything. What we want to introduce is a heart rate variability number. Everybody should know the balance of their own nervous system. So they know their heart rate, it's supposed to be, 60, 72, somewhere in there. Their blood pressure, 120/80, blah, blah, blah. But what's your nervous system firing at? What's your balance of your sympathetic, parasympathetic, and what level are you really functioning? That's what technology measures, and that's the number we can give you to see how well your body is really, truly functioning.
Okay, that was good. So, I never thought about that, but often we do these HRVs, but we don't tell those two numbers that are on there.
Right.
I will today. That's really good. That's awesome. And ask if we've not told you. Ask us. And if you've had one done, sorry. And if you've had one done and we didn't tell you, tell us, dudes, I need that number. Right?
Spot on.
Spot on. So there's a very smart person way back, quite a while ago, but he was a brilliant man. Not you.
Dang it!
Named B.J. Palmer, and he once said
smart.
There were only two dis-eases, not diseases, but dis-eases, meaning the body is not at ease, not working normal. Too much or too little function. And so what that means is when you look at any disease state in the body, let's say cancer, for instance, that's too much proliferation of cancer cells in the body. So the body is producing too many of them. There's some reason why it's doing that. I'll tell you this, it's not genetics. It's not that there's some chromosomal change that causes you to have a bunch of cancer and the three of us not. It's because your body's not able to adapt to the stressors that you have in your life for whatever reason. That's what we figure out. How is your body functioning? And if we can find where it's not functioning properly, we can either speed one part of you up or we can slow one part of you down so that that function is working optimally rather than too little or too much.
Good. Perfect. So,
good. Great.
Anything?
Love it.
So I think the big thing here is, and he hit it pretty well, is ask for your numbers. We got to start giving numbers.
Yeah.
So next week we're going to start talking about conditions. Yes, we did say that. States of health as it relates to the research, and we're going to start really plugging into. We're going to hit the heart first, right?
Yep.
So with that, if you got questions, please post them below. Input, please post it below. These last 3 weeks, we've kind of gone over stuff over and over again, but that's so that you get where we're going. Hopefully you got where we're going now. So now we're going on a bigger journey. We'll see you next week. 1:15, Koca Chiropractic, Facebook Live and Instagram Live.